Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we welcome you once again on this Wednesday evening, and it is in conversation with myself, Huwaida Arraf, right here on Salam Media. We welcome you, our listeners, our viewers on the various platforms of Salam Media. Wonderful being with you once again on this Wednesday evening. And as we have been doing for the last 15 months, there has been a massive focus on what is happening in Palestine, in Gaza in particular. And the most recent news is the much about talk around the Gaza ceasefire. The key question is what can we expect, and how imminent is the ceasefire deal? The key issue here is to unpack and to unravel what this deal is all about. Now, many are saying this is imminent, but clearly there are many challenges from an implementation perspective as well, and a whole host of issues. And together with the ceasefire deal, clearly with the change in government in the United States of America, how much of a factor as far as the ceasefire deal is concerned is the Trump factor as well, with the Biden administration clearly leaving a legacy of 15 months where they allowed this genocide to take place. Now, to unpack all of this, we have assembled an esteemed panel. We have got shortly named Jeenah with the SA BDS Coalition will be joining us, and also we've got author and activist Miko Peled, who's with us, Professor Nidal, Sakr, chairperson of March for Justice out of the United States of America, and in around half an hour from now, we will also be joined by Huwaida Arraf, Palestinian American activist and lawyer. Well, I see two of our panelists this evening are on screen right now. I see Miko Peled and Professor Nidal Sakr. To both of you, Miko and Professor Nidal, assalamu alaikum. We welcome you to the show, and we do appreciate your time.
Thank you. Salam.
Yes, Miko, I'd like to actually begin with you, and I know you have got limited time with us as well, so we'll try and maximize your participation on the panel with us this evening. And it is clear 15 months later, now that the ceasefire deal is imminent, there is a lot of talk, and just an overview in terms of where we are at this point in time, 15 months later, after this genocide, after the death, the destruction, the devastation, all of that has taken place. It's taken 15 months to get to where we are at this point in time.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. I think when we hear the reports about what is happening, people still talk about a war as opposed to referring to this as a genocide. So I think that creates a great deal of misunderstanding about what's happening here. The second thing, we need to remember that Israel always violates agreements that it signs. So with all the excitement that the anticipation of a ceasefire, which will hopefully bring some reprieve to the Palestinians in Gaza, I think we need to be realistic and understand that it will be violated. Israel always violates agreements that it signs. And so I don't think there's any doubt about that. And really, the fact that, you know, there are still close to 20,000 Palestinians in Israeli prisons and Israeli dungeons. And so really, this is a very, very small step forward.
Thank you for that.
I'll just say one more thing. Israel typically creates conditions that are horrific and then gives a little bit of reprieve, and everybody's happy because there's a sense of reprieve. But we have to remember that the hostages could have been released, 15 months ago. They could have been released right away had Israel been, first of all, been interested in releasing them, but also been willing to release Palestinian prisoners who have been, living in horrible conditions in Israeli torture chambers and prisons for all this time. So all of this could have been all of this was unnecessary. It could have been avoided.
Thank you for that, Miko. I see names on screen as well. Naim, assalamu alaikum and welcome. Yes, Professor Nidal, let's just follow up from what Miko has said. And clearly, with the ceasefire deal, and there seems to be a bit of excitement, but again, one cannot be too optimistic as Miko has alluded to, because clearly there are going to be huge challenges. And again, coming back to the question surrounding Benjamin Netanyahu, this man can actually change his mind. And we, at this point in time, just how optimistic is this deal, considering that there are numerous challenges that lie ahead? I think, Prof, I'm not too sure whether you're muted. I don't think we can hear you. Yes, no, I think we are having a problem with you, Prof. If you could possibly just have a look at your sound. But Naeem, just to bring you into the discussion as well. And, we see a lot of reports here in South Africa as well. We see there seems to be some level of excitement, but can one be overly excited at the prospect of the ceasefire deal? Well, I think Naeem is frozen as well. Miko, it appears as if it's just you and I at this point in time. While we're waiting for the other two to log in again, it does appear as if they're frozen. But again, Miko, just coming back to some of the issues that you have raised, let's just talk briefly about the challenges that are associated with the implementation of this deal.
Violates its agreement.
Your mic.
There's no expectation. There should be no expectation, and they're unpredictable. So they might violate it tomorrow. They might violate it a few days later, next week. We don't know how they're going to respond. But there's a lot of public pressure within Israeli society against this deal, against the ceasefire. And really, once again, we have to see it in the context of an ongoing genocide. And there's a short reprieve within the genocide. If we want to end the suffering of Palestinians, if we want to end the story, what is required is to liberate the Gaza concentration camp and liberate the people who live within it, just like, the concentration camps were liberated after World War II. This is what we should be talking about.
Yes, thank you. I see Prophet Nidal is back with us. Prof, let's hope we can hear you. Assalamu alaikum once again. Yes, okay, Prof. I think, from where the issue that obviously I raised, and I said, following up from what Miko has said, with regard to the implementation of this deal, and just your initial thoughts on where we are at this point in time, and how do you see the ceasefire deal?
Okay, aside from the theatrics and the headline news and so forth, we must keep in mind what are the parties involved to this agreement and what their goals and strategies are. So we have, on one side, we have so-called Israel, US, and the Arab camp. Arab camp, we're talking about, Egypt, we're talking about Saudi Arabia, we're talking about all the countries, the Arab countries that supported the genocide and actively funded the genocide. And then we have on the other side, the Palestinians. Of course, when we talk about the camp that's against Gaza, we're talking about also like the Palestinian Authority as well, as being spearhead of the internal Palestinian turmoil. But then you have on the other side, of course, the Palestinians represented by the resistance and Hamas in particular. And then we have the neutral broker, which is Qatar. The goal of the first camp, the anti-Palestine camp, let's call, is the completion and the success of a complete annihilation of the Palestinian cause. And actually, they all have in agreement that they all want the genocide of Gaza to be completed, no less. Whether it's Biden administration or Trump administration, it doesn't really matter. These are all different faces for the same project. We know, for example, the deal they're talking about right now is no different than the deal that the Biden administration reached back in May, and Blinken himself admitted that actually they wanted to give Israel, or to give Netanyahu, the chance to eliminate Hamas and so forth, and continue to try to create realities on the ground that basically would change the terms over everything. So those people, like, you should never underestimate that their goal is actually the completing the genocide project and the complete annihilation of the Palestinian cause. They're talking right now, at least on the Trump advisor or national security advisor side, that he's talking about, before talking about the ceasefire, whether it's going to take place or succeed, he's talking about expanding the Abraham Accords to include Saudi Arabia and so forth. So none of really any of these people is interested or sincere about ending the genocide, about the humanitarian situation in Gaza and so forth. They're only looking for ways that they can get around Hamas being able to succeed in rebuilding itself and continue to be persistent in its resistance. They're all trying to find a way to take revenge against the Palestinian people who paid the ultimate price for the genocide by the U.S. and its agents in the area. So you should never look at this as being any break or any sign of hope, or you should only look at it as that those people have been completely exhausted, especially like with Hamas rebuilding itself and dealing very fatal blows to the Israeli occupation throughout Gaza, especially like in the north, Beit Hanun, Jabalia, and so forth. They're trying to give Israel some more room to breathe, to reorganize itself, and to get back. If you look at the deal and all the statements that are being made and all the promises that are being made by the US, whether it's Trump or Biden, to Israel, if you're talking about what Egypt and the price that Egypt has, basically, the benefits and the gains that are the news unfolding, talking about how much Europeans and Americans paid for Egypt to play its role in the starvation and the genocide of Gaza. So you should never look at any of those parties of this agreement, aside from Qatar, as being anything but enemies of the Palestinian people who are insistent on the destruction of the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian struggle. The news are talking about that we're going to see signing of this treaty perhaps within a couple of days, maybe by the weekend or before the weekend. And we're talking about maybe like a couple of days later for the agreement to start taking place on the ground. The terms of the agreement and the 3 phases and the details of such and such, and how Israel is having guarantees that they can resume their hostility anytime without any condition. It shows actually that this whole treaty is really not something that you should really have so much hope about. You should always take anything that comes from US and its camp with lots and lots of skepticism and suspicion. You should always look at the devil in the details, and you should never underestimate that those people are just like completely misguided, completely insistent on shedding blood and wars and destruction, and nothing good would come out of it. Palestinians know how to play this. Palestinians have that clarity, the resistance. They prove that they actually much more competent than any of them, and they can't be fooled. So we trust in the resistance. We trust in the Palestinian people. We trust that they're aware of the threat of the Palestinian Authority, UAE, Egypt, as well as the threat of so-called Israel and the US. I think these people we're gonna up to learn another lesson by how competent Palestinians are in managing their crises.
Yes, thank you for that, Prof. Naeem. Just to bring you into the discussion, and as Prof. Nidal spoke about the devil in the details, the lack of sincerity, giving Israel some breathing space. Just to understand, is there any real structure or substance in this agreement? Because we know throughout the last 15 months, Netanyahu has called for total victory. He's called for Hamas to be dismantled, to be destroyed, and the total annihilation of Gaza.
Well, of course, there is substance in the agreement, in that, it see potentially the release of thousands of Palestinian prisoners who have been held captive, tortured, etc., for months. It will see the withdrawal, if it's implemented properly and fully, the withdrawal of Israeli troops from initially from parts of Gaza, and then hopefully by the end of the 3rd phase from the whole of Gaza. And it will allow people in Gaza some breathing space, some time without bombs falling on their heads. So there is substance to it. The issue is, there's an Israeli newspaper report that Trump has privately told Netanyahu that he's welcome to violate the agreement whenever he wants. So I think that that kind of thing certainly we must be cautious about. But I think there's also a flip side to it, apart from the immediate kind of relief certainly for Palestinians, 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, and for many people in other parts of the world. There are, of course, the other sides to this, as Professor Sakr pointed out. But I think that one thing that we should also take note of is that this has been 15 months when Israel has not been able to defeat the resistance in Gaza. I think this is quite significant. And it's something that we should think about, contemplate on for a long time to come. Secondly, that other than the fact that they have not been able to defeat the resistance, and nor have they been able to meet any of their other war goals. So one was to defeat the resistance, the other was to uproot and destroy Hamas, etc. None of these objectives that were set out in October 2023 have been met. But apart from that, what the past 15 months has also seen is a kind of mobilization against Israel around the world that we have not seen before. And this is of course at the altar of Palestinian blood being sacrificed in Gaza. But nevertheless, this is the reality. We saw ICJ cases, one of which there's a ruling on. We saw the South African case. We saw cases at the ICC. We saw millions of people regularly marching across the world, trying to, and sometimes successfully, hold their governments to account. So I think that this is an angle to this that we should not forget, number one. And number two, that this ceasefire deal, let's assume it goes into effect in the next few days, and it actually holds, that it should not allow us in the rest of the world to become complacent. This is a real danger, and I think that it would be a problem if it's not, if that happens, because we have again cognizant of the fact that possibly hundreds of thousands of Palestinian lives have been lost in the past 15 months. But nevertheless, we have come to a point regarding Israel that we have not come to before. And this is a point at which we should start moving forward rather than allowing ourselves to be pushed back. So I think that's important to remember as well. And finally, just to say that as we've seen in the past as well with Israel, whenever there's such a ceasefire, whether it was with Lebanon or Gaza, etc. I mean, the past 24 hours, I think about 100 people have been killed. We can expect that until the ceasefire takes effect, they're going to increase their genocidal attacks, and I think that is going to be a serious problem.
Miko, just to get your thoughts on Donald Trump, because it is clear that Donald Trump told Netanyahu to get a deal before he actually gets into office. And the question is how much of a factor is Donald Trump in this latest ceasefire deal? And also in terms of Donald Trump getting into office a few days from now, what would Trump do differently compared to Biden in dealing with somebody like Netanyahu, particularly when it comes to a ceasefire agreement?
There's one thing that we know for sure about Trump is that he's unpredictable. And so it's really impossible to say what he will or will not do or how different he might be from this administration. The issue of support for apartheid in Palestine and for the genocide is bipartisan. And so that doesn't look like it's going to change anyway, anytime soon. We're looking at the cabinet picks, and we're looking at the people holding the major positions in committees in Congress and in the Senate. These are all people who are diehard Zionists. So I don't think we can expect much reprieve. our focus is to change the conversation in this country. I mean, until the conversation in this country, in Washington D.C., where I'm sitting right now, I'm 2 blocks away from the Capitol, is to end the support, this mad support for the genocide and the apartheid, to realize that the Gaza Strip is not a country; it's a concentration camp. That the way to resolve the suffering of Palestinians is not to send band-aids, but to liberate them and to liberate the Gaza Strip. We have to remember that as a part of the deal, the internal deal that's been made between Netanyahu and his cabinet ministers, is that for their support of this ceasefire agreement, which again, I don't think anybody has any doubt Israel will violate, and as the way it's stretched out, there's so many opportunities to violate. His right flank, Netanyahu's right flank, is going to get more concessions and more possibilities to expand their settlements in the West Bank. So what little Palestinian land still exists within the ghettos, the Palestinian ghettos in the West Bank, that's going to be taken, and larger settlements are going to be built, and larger populations will be allowed to go and settle there. So we have to see, if we don't start looking at this in the larger context of Palestine and the struggle to liberate Palestine, and how important it is to change the conversation and stop focusing on tiny little items, but on the larger picture. Until we do that, there's not going to be a resolution of this. And we're going to see the ongoing genocide. We're going to see more ethnic cleansing. We're going to see the ongoing of this horrific apartheid regime that has already been going on for too long. This again, every reprieve for Palestinians is a good thing. Every opportunity for them to breathe and have a day where people are not being killed is a good thing. But we have to remember, this is a Band-Aid. It's a very small Band-Aid for a problem that's been festering for almost 80 years. There needs to be a full liberation of the Gaza concentration camp. Nothing less than that is acceptable. There has to be a full liberation of Palestine, the return of the Palestinian refugees. Nothing short of that should be acceptable, and that's where we should be going. So this so-called reprieve, from this catastrophe to slight reprieve, is really all that it is. It's stopping the catastrophic reality the Palestinians have been enduring in Gaza for so long, for a very short reprieve, and then there's no question that it's going to continue. We need to talk about this in a completely different context of completely dismantling the apartheid state, completely liberating Palestine, and moving on beyond that into a free, democratic Palestine from the river to the sea. All these little focuses on these tiny little things are not helping the big picture at all.
Yes, Miko, and I think just while we have you, and you talk about changing the conversation in the United States of America, what about changing the conversation in Israel?
That's not going to happen until the day after. I think we've seen with the fall of regimes and including apartheid in South Africa. I don't think the internal conversation will not change until the Israeli society and the apartheid state are on their knees. Once they are on their knees and they wake up the next day to a new reality, the conversation will inevitably be different. The Israeli society is an inherently incredibly racist society. And whatever internal friction there is between different segments of the society, as much as it is, are on issues on the issue of Palestine, there's complete unity. On the issue of maintaining the apartheid state and continuing the genocide, there's complete unity. So that conversation is not going to change, I believe, until the day after, until they have no choice, until they're on their knees, and this horror of an apartheid state collapses. But the important thing is to have a plan in place so that once it collapses, it doesn't turn into chaos, but it is replaced with a real free democratic Palestine on all of historic Palestine. And the mechanisms have to be put in place for that.
Yes, thank you for that, Miko. Prof. Nidal, just to bring you in and just following up from what Miko is talking about, changing the conversation and just looking at it from a Palestinian's perspective, what sort of conversations should the Palestinians be having? What conversations would be should the Arab nations and also those, and as you mentioned, you spoke about those that have actively supported Israel in this genocide, what conversations should they be having, considering that possibly there could be an imminent ceasefire deal?
Well, just like I said, like I don't get bogged down in the details so as not to lose perspective on what's happening. We have two projects right now in conflict. One of them is Free Palestine from the river to the sea, and Gaza right now is the spearhead, and Hamas is the spearhead of that project. Then you have the other project, which is Greater Israel, which is basically the American camp and everybody else on that camp. When we look at that, the Greater Israel Project, whether it's Trump, whether it's anybody else, Arabs, Sisi, Netanyahu, in fact, they are all Netanyahu. They're all committed to the same project, to the same goals, which is complete destruction of the Palestinian project and achieving Greater Israel. But when you look at this conflict between these two camps, you find that actually the camp that is creating the realities on the ground and creating the situation with everybody that has dealt with it is actually the Palestinian camp. So yes, in spite of all destruction and the genocide and the human toll and the tragedy that we've been paying in Palestine for all this time, they are the ones who created October 7 as a major step towards the liberation of entire Palestine. They're the ones who actually have stood against the entire world, ganging up against them, being steadfast in spite of all the toll that they're paying. These ceasefires are only some of the tactics that they're using. Yes, Palestinians get a little bit of breathing room and a break in some sense, but in no way that's going to be given up the project of Greater Israel and the annihilation of Gaza and the Palestinian cause. The Palestinians are very aware, as I said, of the challenges they're faced with. They know what the plans for the day after, which is going to completely fail, by the way, for the Israelis and UAE and Egyptians and Palestinian Authority and Americans trying to create some realities that would basically allow Israel to, just like Miko said, annex the West Bank and expand settlements on the West Bank, as they also trying to annihilate Gaza as well. So nothing really changed on the ground from all of this. Yes, ceasefire is going to be taking place, not for the interest of the Palestinians, not to care for the Palestinian human toll or any other consideration. It's because that they're trying to get around the reality that they have right now, where they're basically Israel is basically being sitting duck for Palestinian resistance in Palestine, killing and imprisoning. Actually, there are Israeli soldiers that were imprisoned ever since October 7. I don't know if they've been talking about, but there's at least 11 soldiers that have been imprisoned or arrested by the Palestinians. That there are, if this ceasefire treaty to continue in the 3 stages they're talking about, each of them is about 42 days. At one of them, actually, one of the stages was the last stage. They're supposed to be talking about those 11 soldiers that have been, and actually 11 military Israelis that have been captured since October 7th, a separate deal besides so-called hostages and so forth. So basically, the details of what's happening right now doesn't really matter much, because it is mostly for consumption to help Israel to reorganize and realign its troops and its strategy and so forth. You mentioned something about the Trump administration versus the Biden administration. I don't see much difference. Biden is an ideologue. His cabinet and team as all ideologues. They're all firm believers in the Greater Israel Project for religious reasons and many other reasons. On the other side, Trump is not necessarily an ideologue, he's a transactional person. However, just like Miko mentioned, all of his team is basically staunch Zionist ideologues. There are certain things in play, like Trump interactions and his circle is different than Biden's circle. He has some quote-unquote transactional people who are really a little bit, who are not Zionists, by the way. They're trying to give him a little bit different perspective on things. I think he listened to them because he owes them to a great deal his victory in the swing states. Nonetheless, his team, his cabinet so far, all the ones that are being confirmed and so forth, they're all Zionists. Trump himself is Zionist, but he's not, just like I said, he's transactional, not ideologue, which is a slightly different type of person. All of this doesn't really matter as much as what the resistance is doing, what their perspective is, how they're managing the situation, what are the challenges that they see from their own perspective. I think Palestinians and Palestine is the major player, and they will always have the upper hand regardless of the military balance and human toll that we're witnessing in Gaza and even in the West Bank. But just like Miko said, this is only another round of the quote-unquote hostilities disguised with so-called ceasefire. But make no mistake, the war continues, and the liberation war is not going to stop until, inshallah, Palestine is liberated from the river to the sea.
Yes, let's bring Naeem in. Naeem, the key issue here is in the event of this ceasefire agreement being signed, the key question is, will this ceasefire survive beyond the first phase? Because we know they are talking about 3 phases. They're talking about a 6-week or a 42-day phase. And clearly there are going to be a number of challenges with regard to this deal, the issue surrounding withdrawal of Israel and its security forces, its army, redeployment, things like dismantling the crossings that have now been established in Gaza, the movement of people between the north and south. These are real factors, these are real issues that are likely to impact on the people of Palestine. And when one looks at the main condition of the people of Palestine and Gaza, of Hamas in particular, talking about the total withdrawal of Israel, and again, looking at a permanent end to the atrocities and the genocide.
So on the one hand, nothing is certain. Certainly with the Israelis, nothing is certain. They might tomorrow, or tonight for that matter, even after the press conference, they might say they want to change the terms of the agreement. So, we must be clear about that they have never been honorable in the past more than 7 decades, almost 8 decades. We don't expect that they would change now, talking about the Zionists, that is. And the Israeli power structure. So that's on the one hand. Things could change depending on what they do. On the issue of the Netzarim corridor and Philadelphia, I mean, those things are covered in the agreement. So the evacuation from the Netzarim corridor is supposed to take place in the first phase. The Philadelphia, I think it's in the third phase, but might be in the second. But those things are there. I don't believe that the resistance would have accepted any deal that didn't have both of those corridors being dismantled. So that is there. But again, will Israel stick to it is a big question. Now, of course, we are talking about a long war, but we need to also differentiate between what are strategies and what are tactics. What we're seeing now, if the ceasefire goes into operation and it holds, and it's possible that it could hold, I'm saying it's uncertain, but it's possible that it could hold. And if it does hold, then we could, to some extent, regard this as something of a tactical victory. On this at this point in time, on this particular issue, a tactical victory. That doesn't mean that the strategy is over, that the strategic goals have changed. The goal of a free, liberated Palestine from the river to the sea remains. The struggle continues, and tactical victories are just stepping stones to the bigger victories. So we're not sure how it'll whether it'll hold or not, and how, but we pray that it will. at least for the immediate term, for that, what we've all been saying, kind of breathing space. The other point I should just say, two things. One is that the other thing that the past 15 months has done, particularly the past couple of months, is that it has exposed, for those to whom it might not have been exposed before, it has exposed the Palestinian Authority completely and utterly as a security contractor for the Israeli Zionist regime. They've crossed any lines that might have been there in the sand, killing Palestinians in the West Bank, of course, killing Palestinian resistance fighters, but even civilians, children, a journalist, etc. I think that it is clear, as Professor Sakr said earlier on, one thing that the past 15 months has done, it has clarified who the enemy is. And right now, the Palestinian Authority is in that camp. And my second point, and is related to this, is that the Israelis want the next step for them. They'll take a break, perhaps, on Gaza, but they want to move in full force into the West Bank. They want to annex the West Bank. They've made that clear in the Knesset, etc. And there's a very good chance. I agree with Miko that Trump is very unpredictable, but there's a very good chance that Trump will go along with that kind of annexation plan. What that means for the Palestinians as a whole, and in the West Bank in particular, is something that I think we haven't had enough of a conversation about yet. What does it mean for Palestinians if the West Bank gets annexed and becomes part of Israel? As far as Israel is concerned, under international law it won't, but as far as they're concerned and the United States, it will become part of it. What does that mean for Palestinians who live in the West Bank and Palestinians more generally? What does it mean for Palestinians in Gaza, who will now be looked at as some kind of a weird outlier? What does all of that mean for that? But what it also means, this annexation, is how do we then regard the Palestinian Authority and its role? Will it continue to survive in an annexed West Bank? And if it does, then it will be even worse than a Bantustan government in South Africa was in the past. I mean, in many respects, the PA already is worse than any Bantustan government in South Africa, and has less power than any Bantustan government had in South Africa, and is more complicit with the oppressor than any Bantustan government was in South Africa. But if the West Bank is annexed, it will become even more so. And then what is the attitude of Palestinians and the rest of us around the world to this Palestinian Authority? What do we do, for example, in South Africa, when we have in Pretoria something called the Embassy of the State of Palestine, which essentially is a representative office for a Palestinian Authority, which is the security contractor for Israel? What do we do about that? What do we say to our government about that? I think these are all questions that come up in this immediate next phase after the ceasefire deal goes into operation, and hopefully it holds.
Yes, Professor Nidal, I think, Naeem makes some very, very telling points, and talking about, how the Palestinians would deal with all the other various players, and he's made a telling point with regard to the Palestinian Authority. For example, the key question is, how will Palestinians, those that want to be liberated, those that are not subservient to the likes of the United States of America or to some of the other regimes, like, for example, the Palestinian Authority, how will Palestinians be dealing with this enemy? Because, Trump obviously would have been delivering a lot more to Netanyahu, talking about the annexation of the West Bank, for example. And we know that in his first term of office, when he left, there was talk of normalization with Saudi Arabia that was already on the cards at that point in time, and that was put on hold. And again, Trump calling on Israel to finish the job that it had actually started. So all of this put together tells us that there are huge, there are massive challenges for the people of Palestine. And we've also heard about how Gaza will be governed, where the PA, and this is a tough question as well, where the PA has been talking about governing both Gaza and the West Bank.
Brother, when we talk about Trump, let's remember that first of all, he already cashed in the $100 million from the Sheldons in return for promise of annexation of West Bank. As I said, his national security advisor, Waltz, he's talking before even signing the ceasefire, which has been, by the way, Trump himself made the announcement about 20 minutes ago that a ceasefire deal has been reached and is being signed right now. But his senior security advisor, before even announcing the deal, he was talking about resuming the Abraham Accord treaties, including Saudi Arabia in it. So nobody really cares for the Palestinian situation. They all have their own agendas and so forth. Yes, the annexation of West Bank has always been on the table. Trump even talked about a greater Israel during his campaign. And so we're very, very clear about this. Palestinian Authority, in terms of Palestinian Authority in Gaza, we know that Blinken actually yesterday was talking about Palestinian Authority in Gaza. Palestinians, we don't really get distracted by all of those shiny objects. We know exactly who the enemy is. We know what our battle is. We know our goals. We know our strategy, and we know we have a clarity of the path that we are taking. And now I'm speaking as a Palestinian who's in touch with the Palestinian street as well as with the Palestinian leadership. There is not a single Palestinian who does not look at the Palestinian Authority as the enemy, as the security contractor of Israel, as Brother Naeem mentioned. We saw that some tribes from Khalil, from Hebron, who were trying to mediate, trying to diffuse the situation between the Palestinian Authority and the people in the West Bank. And after what happened in Jenin, they all pulled out and they just took their hands off from trying to provide any legitimacy to the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority right now is seen by the Palestinian as the enemy, as part of the enemy, and as a spearhead of the Israeli occupation. So there is no confusion about this. And of course, right now we have their civilian Palestinian blood in their hand, not to mention that they've been basically a spearhead of the Israeli occupation in Jenin and many other areas. So we Palestinians, we don't see, there's no confusion. We have that clarity of the challenges that we are faced with, whether it's on the international level, namely the US and the Arab regimes and so forth. We know who the enemy is. From the US side, I mean, I'm looking at from also policymaker, American policymaker, even if they were Zionist oriented, they're looking at the Middle East. One of the top priorities for Trump is Saudi signing up peace treaty with Israel. They're looking right now at Syria, and they're looking at the new Middle East emerging, especially with Syria, Turkey, Qatar access and so forth, how to foil that, how to try to contain it, how to fail the Syrian revolution project. We have the new changes that are taking place in Lebanon, which is also a positive development. So there are many realities in the Middle East that are forcing themselves on everybody, especially Syria, Lebanon, and they need to somehow to catch up with those. And they're trying to put Palestine on the back burner for a little while, not for too long, by giving them a break with ceasefire for 2-3 weeks, while Americans catch up with what's happening in the Middle East, while the Arab regimes catch up with the other with those developments, while the Israelis are repositioning themselves, rehabilitating their military for the next round and so forth. So we have no illusion in our mind. Yes, the ceasefire is exactly the terms that Hamas laid out from day one. There's no change in them. Complete withdrawal, return of the displaced people, allowing lifting the siege, allowing humanitarian aid, complete withdrawal from entire Gaza Strip. We know all this stuff. So this is basically what the 3 stages are, which is basically Hamas demands as they were spelled out from day one, before even the very first prisoner exchange. So from the Palestinian side, we have clarity. For the other side, they do have clarity about what they want to do. For us, we're staying our grounds and just playing it along, getting all we can get and preparing for the next round. On their other side, I think they're the ones who are a little bit falling behind in terms of the realities that Hamas or Palestine has created for them, and forcing them to deal with it as they keep emerging.
We thank you for that, Prof. Nidal. I see Huwaida Arraf, attorney, has joined us as well. Huwaida, assalamu alaikum and welcome to you. I think, Huwaida, I think your mic has been muted. We are having a slight problem listening to you. I'm hoping, we can hear you now. No, definitely there seems to be a bit of a problem. Huwaida, we would see if we could just possibly log in and log out and log in again. Hopefully we should be in a better position. But again, Naeem, just to continue with yourself as well. And there's just so much that one can actually dissect, that one can actually unpack from this proposed ceasefire agreement alone. But again, there is just so much history, and there is just so much that has played out and will be playing out, and there are just so many agendas that are in the making as well. And that alone obviously tells us that we need to be skeptical, and the skepticism is actually justified considering what has happened. And as our Professor Nidal has mentioned, there is just so much going into the future when one looks at all the different players, looking at the agendas, looking at personal interests, looking at their own interests, and that skepticism is definitely justified.
Well, skepticism is definitely justified. As I said earlier on, in almost 80 years of Israel's existence, Israelis, Zionists have never been honorable. So we can't expect that they will just abide by a ceasefire because Qatar says so, or someone else says so, or even Trump says so. So the skepticism is definitely justified. Israel is not alone in this. Our skepticism is not just about Israel, but also by the fact that Israel is supported by the sole superpower in the world today, which is going to be in a few days' time headed by a madman, currently by an ardent racist Zionist, but in a few days' time by a madman. So that all of that makes us extremely skeptical. What I'm saying, however, is that if we only look at big pictures, then we forget that there are little pictures within them, that there are such things as tactics, and there are such things as tactical victories or tactical losses. And so this, the past 15 months, October 7 was 2023 was a tactical operation. How did it play out from a tactical perspective? It's not the overall strategy, but from a tactical perspective. So that's the one thing, the point that I want to make. And the second point that I want to make is that ultra skeptical approaches to issues often lead to a sense of hopelessness and complacency. And this is not the time for either. What we're seeing is a situation where there have certain gains have been made. The resistance has not been defeated. Israel has not achieved any of its objectives, and this should give us pause to say that we're at a point now where we've brought Israel as a global community to a particular level where it's facing all of these charges at international courts, where the nations of the world, the peoples of the world, are arraigned against it, etc. What is the next step to deepen the Israeli crisis? It has an economic crisis. It has a numerous crises. What do we do to deepen those crises and bring about its downfall? That, being skeptical all the time as I said, can lead to a sense of hopelessness where we then feel like, there's only a big picture. And the big picture is that there's this great Israel who can do whatever it wants, and no one holds it to account, and it can break ceasefire agreements when it likes, and it's supported by the United States and whoever else, and therefore, what can we do? So that's all I'm saying. I'm saying that we need a careful tactical assessment of the past 15 months, an assessment of how it fits into the broader strategy for Palestinian liberation, and an understanding of where globally the past 15 months have brought us in terms of the struggle for Palestinian liberation, and how we take that forward in an escalated and elevated way, and how we deepen the Israeli crisis, because Israel is today in crisis. The divisions within Israel are now deeper than they were 2 years ago. The economy of Israel is worse than it was 2 years ago. These are opportunities that need to be taken, and if we are skeptical all the time, we might miss them.
Yes, Naeem. In fact, let's just bring Huwaida in as well, and hopefully we will be able to hear Huwaida a lot more clearly. Huwaida, assalamu alaikum once again.
Wa alaikum assalam. Hopefully you can hear me now. Yes.
Yes, Lauren, and we welcome you. We thank you for your time as well. And I think, Huwaida, just obviously you've joined the discussion now, and until now, obviously we've been taking a look at this latest ceasefire deal, and in terms of how optimistic should we actually be with regard to this deal? How different is it with the Trump administration, taking office next week compared to the Biden administration as well? And just overall, just getting your view and your thoughts on how you see the ceasefire deal playing out as we speak right now.
Well, thank you again for having me. It's always good to be with you, and an honor to be with Professor Nidal and Naeem, of course, an old comrade, though it's been a while. I don't like to speculate too much about what is going to happen. Obviously, the news of a ceasefire is very well received and very much needed by Palestinians, certainly in Gaza, but Palestinians the world over. And the fact that it took an upcoming Trump presidency is really an indictment on the Democratic Party and just how complicit they have been. And not only complicit, they have been full partners in this genocide. And that is not to say that we expect better of Trump or that he is necessarily any better, but we know that he does. He said that he would stop war because he likes to see himself as able to do anything and a deal maker, and obviously he was able to put the necessary pressure, although I think the Biden administration will still try to take some credit for this if the ceasefire takes place before January 20th. But we should be very clear that the Biden administration is owed absolutely no credit for this, and in fact, again, are full partners in this genocide. Now, while Palestinians certainly need this reprieve, if people have studied other genocides or can just even imagine what is to come, is a period that is going to be just as difficult, if not more difficult, in terms of Palestinians just assessing the extreme amount of loss, just unfathomable. And how do you begin to rebuild? What I would caution, I think, for the international community, and it follows with what Naeem was saying, is taking a full assessment of where these last 15 and a half months have brought us and what we need to do to go forward. I would just caution the international community about thinking, okay, we've achieved a ceasefire, now leave it to the politicians, or now leave it to whoever, that we don't have that much of a role to play anymore. Actually, we need to step it up on a number of different levels. First of all, we know that Israel is infamous for not adhering to ceasefires, and every single ceasefire that it has agreement in the past with Palestinians, whether with Hamas or even currently with Hezbollah in Lebanon, they have broken. They repeatedly break. They give themselves that leeway to break, and they are never held accountable, right? And so I think we need to be vigilant as far as that's concerned. We need to understand that Palestinians still need a lot more help in rebuilding, but politically, so there is still that economic aid that's very much needed. But we really have to step up the political pressure and not let up at all. In fact, I was late because I was on a legal meeting, and this morning I was on another legal meeting in terms of being with lawyers for how we continue pursuing legal accountability. Israel cannot be, and every single soldier from the smallest soldier to the top echelons cannot be let off the hook for these crimes against humanity that they have been responsible for. So we need to continue pursuing there. And politically, I think we're going to notice that they're going to start talking about negotiations, and we're going to hear again about a two-state solution, and we cannot let that happen, that they try to bring us back to this era of unending failed talks about a two-state. Again, we know 30 years of failed quote-unquote peace process because it doesn't recognize that kind of framework of a two-state solution, fails to recognize or deliberately obscures what the Israeli projects, what the Zionist project really is, which is, again, I think all of your listeners know, a settler colonial project that from its very inception intended to replace the Palestinian people, meaning there's no room in there with Zionism for Palestinian liberation. And therefore, if we let ourselves be taken down that road again into negotiating to talk about a two-state solution, we'll be setting ourselves back. We need to continue to dismantle Zionism, to delegitimize Zionism and the whole foundations of the state of Israel. And that's, on the road to its dismantlement, which is the only thing that will bring true liberation, freedom, justice, and equality for all people, irrespective of race, religion, ethnicity. So while this is welcome, that Palestinians in Gaza certainly are going to get a little bit, hopefully, some reprieve, I would not be surprised if Israel repeatedly violates the ceasefire. So I think we need to be vigilant there, and we need to not let ourselves think that we have a breather now or we can step back. We need to step up our work to make sure that these horrific losses, first of all, that there is accountability, that we're pursuing that, and that these deaths and these sacrifices aren't in vain, that we let ourselves be taken back by the politicians that be into a dead end framework that will never help achieve Palestinian liberation.
Well, we thank you for that, Huwaida. And just to the panelists, we're going to go for a quick ad break. We'll be back in a minute or two.
Embark on your spiritual journey to Umrah with Mr. Fly Travels. Are you ready to fulfill a lifelong dream and experience the spiritual journey of Umrah? At Mr. Fly Travels, we are dedicated to providing seamless, spiritually enriching trips to the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Let us handle every detail so you can focus on your connection with Allah. Our Umrah packages include visa processing, luxurious accommodation, private transfers, guided ziyarah tours, and culinary delights. Take the first step on your journey to spiritual rejuvenation. Reserve your Umrah package today. Limited spots available. Our flexibility with dates to accommodate our clients makes us unique. Call Zuberi on 074 044 4300.
Valley's Motor Spares. We supply motor spares and accessories for all makes and models of motor cars, LDVs, buckies, trucks, and earth-moving equipment. We deliver on time, every time. Please contact us via WhatsApp on 014-592-0925 or call 014-592-0925 or visit 28 Zenderling Street, Rustenburg. Remember the name, Valley's Motor Spares.
Kids these days are smart, and when you're competing for their attention against their smartphones, you need to make smart choices, like using Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil in every meal you make. It's naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether you're cooking, frying, or baking, you get the great tasting results that'll get their attention faster than the latest app. And if that doesn't work, change the Wi-Fi password. Sunfoil. Now we're cooking.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al Bayt Lodge. your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities, conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
As heavy snow and bitter winds descend on Gaza, Afghanistan, and Lebanon, hundreds of displaced and refugee families struggle to survive the winter. Without adequate shelter or clothing, the harsh weather threatens lives. Donate towards AMA's Winter Rescue Campaign to provide the food, fuel, and shelter needed by families in Gaza, Lebanon, and Afghanistan to survive the elements and provide warmth to those in need.
Yasin Badat Financial Advisory. Are your financial goals feeling out of reach? Yasin Badat Financial Advisory is here to turn your aspirations into achievements. Our dedicated team, armed with a history of success, is ready to guide you through the complex nature of financial and investment planning. Whether you're a seasoned investor or new to the game, our personalized solutions cater to your unique goals and risk appetite. Trust in our commitment to transparency, integrity, and excellence. Ready to unlock a world of financial freedom? Partner with us today. Call Yasin Badat Financial Advisory at +27 33 346 2071 or visit www.yasinbadat.com. Yasin Badat Financial Advisory, guiding you to financial success.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Well, we welcome you back, and as we continue our panel discussion this evening, taking a look at the ceasefire and what to expect next, we continue with our panelists this evening. We've got named Jeenah, Huwaida Arraf, and Professor Nidal Sakr, who are with us. Professor Nidal, just to continue with yourself, and as Huwaida mentioned it, she spoke about political accountability. And I recall very early when this genocide started unfolding, you and I had this discussion, and you made a very telling point with regard to Gaza and how Gaza will be changing the world, determining a new world order, and also taking a look at the narrative. Now, we know with these ceasefire proposals and even agreement is actually reached, looking at the media in particular, and the media will have its own spin on what the ceasefire actually means. And again, taking a look at mainstream media, and we've seen this narrative over and over again, where we looked at what the mainstream media has been saying, and again, holding politicians, holding governments accountable, which the mainstream media has failed to do. But what we will be seeing is possibly credit being given to the likes of Trump, possibly even to the likes of Biden and Blinken and everyone else that has been involved in securing this deal.
Brother, if you notice, like since October 7 until now, there has been major profound changes that happened on the world scene, whether on the political level, government level, the masses in the street, the public opinion, and even the course of law, whether it's the international or even the national course. The Israeli project has been on a free fall, and nothing can stop it. Israel has been exposed. The mainstream media has been exposed. The governments have been exposed. People actually came out opening their eyes. First of all, there is so much more awareness worldwide to what's really happening. One of the great successes of October 7 that it brought the Palestinian issue to the forefront as the major world issue. and people start paying attention, start listening, start looking for themselves, start looking for the truth, and start expressing their outrage and disbelief to all what's happening. This is only getting worse and worse in terms of the Israeli project. This is getting worse and worse in terms of all the supporters and the culprits in the genocide that's taken place. I'm not impressed by Trump. I was never impressed, and I will never be impressed by Trump. Trump, he's just a person with his own agenda. It might have benefits for us in terms of making some minimal gains here and there, but nonetheless, he's somebody who has his own agenda, and his agenda so far and in the past has been to be quite in line with the Zionist agenda. One of the great benefits of October 7 that it really exposed the Arab regimes as being Zionist projects themselves. I'm not really, even though the ceasefire would give us like room to breathe and break, but like I said, ceasefire today is the same ceasefire that Hamas laid out in terms of its demands from day one. We know that actually there is no way that they're going to accept that. There is no way that they're going to give into that. Right now, they're going along with it for now, but we know that just like I said, they're repositioning themselves to take on the Palestinian cause and maybe like deal us like maybe even more painful blows. You have to understand something. One of the greatest impacts of October 7 is how hardened the Palestinian streets are today, in spite of the human toll we took in Gaza and West Bank and even Lebanon and other places. People now are much more determined than ever before to commit to the liberation project. So if you look at it like really, like get out of this, like the daily realities that you're faced with and the political pickering that's taking place and who wants to sign and who's going to break it, and the Israelis are going to break the ceasefire and also these are little details that are incidental in my opinion. I think if you try to have this iBird's view on the situation, you find that there is unstoppable liberation project that's underway. You have a very shaken Zionist imperialist project on the other side. Of course, the Palestinian liberation is an earthquake to the entire area, because we know that the ramifications of free Palestine, that means free entire Arab region as well. So yes, it is a big crisis that we're faced with right now. The human toll has been paid, and we are prepared actually to continue paying that toll, whatever it takes, until we liberate our country, our land. And by doing this, of course, we're liberating the entire world. Alhamdulillah, so far we managed to be part of the people liberation throughout the world by opening their eyes and taking to the streets in solidarity with Palestine. Inshallah, we're going to continue that tide. The tide is going to continue until it reaches higher and higher levels within societies, all the way, inshallah, to the government level and the international organizations and the mainstream media. Time is on our side. Yes, it is a battle. The price is worth it, and inshallah, we will prevail.
Well, inshallah, certainly will. And again, Prof. Nidal speaks about the unstoppable liberation project, and just looking at it from a BDS perspective, looking at it from civil society, looking at it from a Palestinian solidarity perspective. Let's just, moving, obviously, even if the ceasefire agreement is signed, where does this actually leave organizations like the ones that you represent as well, being part of the BDS Coalition and many of the other Palestinian solidarity organizations, and civil society, and just people in general who identify with the Palestinian cause?
Well, first, let me just apologize for my lighting problems earlier on. I hope I fixed it during the break, and I can't even blame ESCOM this time. I don't represent the BDS Coalition, so I can't speak on their behalf. But I think that some of the comments I made earlier on and what Huwaida said as well is necessary in this regard. And that is that, as we're saying, one battle might be over, the war goes on. and it's critical that we don't drop the baton at this point. It's absolutely critical, because if we do, then things can go backwards. And when I say we here, I'm talking about the broader solidarity movement globally, but also Palestinians, both in Palestine and outside Palestine. I think that excitement and euphoria is important, and where relevant, but those things shouldn't overtake sober assessment and strategy making, and that's the point at which we are, where we require sober assessment. We require proper strategy being put into place to move forward in a way that supports the Palestinian struggle for liberation in a multifaceted way. And when I say multifaceted way, it's because I think that too many people in the solidarity movement globally, not Palestinians, non-Palestinians, pick and choose what aspect of Palestinian life or Palestinian strategy or Palestinian tactics they want to support. When Palestinians decide that part of their strategy is armed resistance, then we are bound to support that strategy. And I think this is very important. Another point I just want to make, extending from that, but picking up on something that Huwaida said as well, that now, with the ceasefire being signed, and let's assume that it actually takes effect and it holds, the temptation for many, less so in the solidarity movement, but certainly outside the solidarity movement, the temptation to say, okay, breathe a sigh of relief, things are over, let's move on with our lives, is great. And we need to be very careful about that. And I speak here particularly as a South African. South Africa took a great step with the International Court of Justice, and subsequent to the initial application, 2-3 additional applications, one on Rafah, another on something else, etc. But more recently, with the absolute genocidal events taking place in northern Gaza, South Africa has been quiet. Now with the ceasefire, will we see South Africa going even quieter on that? I think that this is a real danger, and South Africa, in many ways, from the perspective of states, South Africa is at the forefront of this solidarity effort. And if South Africa starts becoming quiet, we certainly can expect that from other states. So as South Africans, and I know that your listenership and viewership is mostly South Africans, as South Africans, we need to be extremely vigilant, number one. And number two, this is the time when we need to start putting even more pressure on our government to ensure that they do not drop the ball. I mean, the comment that came from our new ambassador to the United States, that in future on the Palestinian issue, we will not deal in megaphone diplomacy, I think is very concerning, and is a challenge for those of us who support the Palestinian struggle to stand up and actually raise and shout into our megaphones. This is the time that South Africa needs to step up. This is the time that it needs to ensure that its case at the ICJ does not weaken, that it actually takes it forward even more strongly. This is the time, with this kind of breather that's going to be provided, to say, right, let's collect all the information about the South Africans who served in the Israeli occupation forces. Let's prosecute them. Let's make sure that they are dealt with, that we won't have such mercenaries in our country, etc. I'm afraid that the temptation to drop that ball will be embraced, and we will be going backwards in this matter. So I think that for South Africans, there's really a great challenge right now to make sure that we all, in civil society and as a nation, but also our government, remains consistent and remains consistently active.
Well, then, one cannot actually dispute what you are saying, and particularly with regard to the government. And it's just so easy to actually drop the ball, as you're saying. And Huwaida, again, the point I made earlier on and before you came on is Israel will still retain the right to be flexible enough to do what it wants, when it wants, and again, supported by regimes like the Trump regime as well. And like Naeem mentioned, that there are definite concerns with regard to governments in particular. On the ground, yes, we still will have a lot of pressure coming through in terms of whatever actions we need to take, whether it's protest action or action in any other form, whether it's through BDS, boycotts, divestment, sanctions, whatever it is at the end of the day. But again, like Naeem says, there is a danger, and the danger that is lurking is if we drop the ball and take this ceasefire for granted, we possibly could be on a back foot, and also at the same time, again, we wouldn't be achieving much in terms of what the Palestinians obviously are looking at, and more importantly, their freedom, their liberation, free from what we've seen unfolding in the last 15 months or even in the last 70 odd years.
Yeah, and I apologize if these points were made before I came on, but I think that one of the things we have to realize is, yes, the active onslaught bombardment might stop if the ceasefire holds, but Gaza will go back to, at best, and not even, it'll still be in a worse state off than it was on October 7th, not only because of all of the massive destruction, but Israel will still control all of the entrances and exits. It'll still be an open air, prison, concentration camp, or extermination camp, if you will. And so that fundamental lack of freedom will still be there, like it was before October 7th, like it was for 2 decades before that, and like it's been for 76 years. And these were the things that led to October 7th, and are the basis for why we still don't have peace in the region, because of Israel's ongoing conduct while it tries to present itself to the world as, I don't even want to say peaceful, but wanting peace, and then blaming everything that happens on the Palestinians. But part of continuing to control all entrances and exits to Gaza will be, and I haven't read everything, I don't know if all of the details of the ceasefire agreements are out. I've read, I think, most of what's been out, but are journalists going to be let in? That's a big thing, right? Journalists have been excluded for the last 15 and a half months, and Palestinian journalists have been deliberately targeted, of course, still doing as much as they can to document their own annihilation. But with a ceasefire taking hold, Israel, of course, is excused. They're not letting journalists in for their own protection. Well, if you are going to stop bombarding every inch of the Gaza Strip, then there should be no excuse for not allowing journalists in. And so that, I think, we need to highlight. If they continue to deny journalists coming in, of course, we know because they want to control the narrative. So we have to push on that. And like I said, be vigilant about monitoring other parts, because Israel will still be repressive. Israel will still, I think, I don't put it past them to even break the ceasefire and blame it on Palestinians in one way or another. And so it requires vigilance on our part there in monitoring as much as we can, and taking reports from Palestinians as they continue to come out, and then insisting that people being allowed in, not just humanitarian aid, of course, which is very much needed, but people that want to go be in solidarity, want to assist, and first and foremost, journalists that need to document. I want to comment on one thing that Brother Nidal said, about people's eyes having been opened from this since October 7th. And I agree very much. And Israel has, its image in the international community and otherwise has taken a big hit, as in other aspects of Israel's even existence, economy, social fabric, everything else. But as I mentioned earlier, the United States, as we all know, really is a full partner, right, in this genocide. And the United States has previously done similar, if not even greater, atrocities, and killed hundreds of thousands and millions of people, and for the most part has gotten away with it. So now, a couple of decades later, we know that Iraq was wrong. We know how many people the United States has killed. Has the United States paid any price for it at all? And so that eyes have been opened is good, but we still have to push for accountability. And one of the ways I think that we do that, which has been mentioned over and over again here, is BDS, of course, focusing on wherever is Israeli, but also American products. As you know, and as your listeners know, in South Africa, of course, boycotting American products or compelling American companies to pull out of South Africa was a big blow to the apartheid regime. And I think that it needs to be here also. And American companies have taken a hit globally in terms of their products, but I think we need to also step that up, because we will see a concerted attempt to try to revitalize Israel's image, led by the United States. We will continue to see the gaslighting here, the complete support, not only from the Trump administration, but by Congress, pushed by Israel's supporters here, I mean, where I'm speaking to you from the United States, and the great power of the Israel lobby. So while people's eyes have been opened, that's not going to translate into a lot of political progress if you have the financial and political weight of the United States, and the United States throws its weight around internationally also to prevent accountability for Israel, if it's allowed to continue to do that. And so just keeping in mind, also focusing on the U.S. and the U.S.'s efforts to rehabilitate Israel's image, and even all the losses that it's taken going forward, will be something I fully expect, and we have to fight against that. So it's not only enough for people's eyes to have been opened, but we have to make sure that those open eyes are translated into actions, and that we tie those things, what the United States has been doing to support Israel. And that's maybe a job more of the people living in the United States, but how that has had a detrimental effect on American citizens, for example, like many people and commentators are doing now with the wildfires in California, and how the people that own most of the water in California are also the same people who've been funding the Israeli military and Israeli settlers, and how this kind of money has been taken away from Los Angeles firefighters, and how much money has been given to Israel. These kinds of connections could translate open eyes to actual fury and anger amongst American citizens, because Palestine might not be close enough to them to spur them into action, but when they see how it affects their daily lives, that might be that kind of impetus. So just to keep those things in mind.
Yes, thank you for that, Huwaida. Prof. Nidal, in fact, I'm just keeping an eye out on social media at this point in time as well, on X, and I've seen a number of posts that have come through where we see Palestinians prostrating, going to sujood, now that a ceasefire agreement has been reached, and there seems to be a lot happening on social media at this point in time. Lots of tears, lots of prostrations of gratitude, and obviously this announcement has been welcomed by the people of Palestine. But again, coming back to the whole question of Palestine and what the Palestinians really want, it's going to be all or nothing.
Is that for me?
Yes.
Brother, since October 7, we really haven't had the chance to grieve. So yes, with the ceasefire, now we're coming to grip with the reality, with the losses, with the destruction, with the pain, with the suffering, with all what we endured. So yes, people will prostrate, of course, as always, because we owe gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all situations, whether it's ease or hardship. So yeah, there's going to be like a time of coming to grip with the new realities, but let's not ever forget that resistance is lifelong project. You know, we go through battles every now and then. This has been a major battle since October 7, but it's by no means the end. We fight our battles on every front, on the public opinion, on the legal course, in politics, and raising awareness and staying engaged, and taking our struggle to higher grounds every time. This is our basic life story, all of us. If we think at any point that no matter what happens in terms of the little break we get here and there, that we've reached our goal and we reach victory, we might not even witness victory in our lifetime. It might not be until our children or grandchildren, but nonetheless, it is the cause that we are all lived in, and we continue to live our life for, and hopefully, like, we will all meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on that path. So, but at the same time, like, we have to understand, as we are dealing with different parties, different complications, different adversaries, and Israel and support and so forth, our faith is first and foremost is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the master of the universe and everything that's taken place. And we look at it, and unlike Israel is looking at it as land grab and imperialist project of stealing somebody else's land and resources and history, we look at it from our perspective as a trial, that we are being tested in terms of our faith, in terms of our sincerity and commitment to the cause. So it's really like a battle that's been played by different parties or by different sides. Nonetheless, the parameters or the motives and the intentions and the goals are completely different, even though that we are fighting over so-called Palestine. Palestine to us is not just like a land, it's not like just a geographic territory. Palestine to us is an identity. Palestine to us is life. Palestine to us is heritage and history. Palestine to us is belonging. We're fighting for all of those, when the Israelis are just fighting for a land grab and some superiority in the region and some evil imperialist project. So yes, we are fighting a battle, but we are not the same. We are not the same type like our enemy is. That's why when we look at the U.S., that's why when we look at the Israelis, that's why when we look at the Arab Zionists and so forth, we see them in their true size, in their true perspective. We're not impressed by them. We're not overwhelmed by them. Yes. If they have military superiority and they can inflict more pain on us, physical pain, that's a price that we are willing to pay. Nonetheless, we are the ones who have unchecking faith in our right and who we are, on what we stand for. Life continues, the struggle continues. Palestine will be free and liberated no matter what the price is. And yes, we haven't paid the full price yet, and there is much more price to pay, and we are willingly and gladly prepared to pay that price. And we will, inshallah, live our life committed to our cause. As far as Gaza, yes, Gaza is having break, inshallah, is having a breathing room for now. But we know that every party to this deal, we are not mistaken that they are the true enemies, that they are committed to our destruction. Even Egypt, that's supposedly been part of the ceasefire. The only thing they're looking for is the money that they're going to be making in taxing and putting fines and stealing and looting all of these aid convoys that are going to Gaza. So we know exactly, like, we're not mistaken, we're not confused, we're not misguided or fooled by everybody's intention in this whole deal, but we know where we are. We know what we stand for. We know that we are creating the reality on the ground. We know that we force the new reality with October 7 and starting like this, inshallah, final stage of our liberation battle. And we will continue, inshallah, until Palestine is free, no matter what the price is.
Well, certainly, Professor Nidal, and we will continue as well. Naeem, we're going to go around now just to get some final thoughts. And I know social media is actually a buzz at this point in time, keeping an eye out, and there seems to be a lot of euphoria as well, a lot of happiness as well coming through from a variety of posts on various social media platforms. Just, where to from here, and just some of your thoughts in terms of what we should be actually thinking about.
Well, firstly, I think that we hope and we pray that the ceasefire will actually hold. That not it's not just the ceasefire, but all of the aspects of this deal, which includes crucially the return of the thousands of Palestinian captives, prisoners, who have been held in dungeons, who have been tortured, whose limbs have been amputated, etc. That happens. We hope that there will be the full withdrawal of the occupation forces from Gaza, that the aid that will be coming in will be increasing and sufficient to be able to deal with the consequences of the genocidal actions of the past 15 months. So we hope and pray that all of this will actually come to pass. That in some ways Palestinians in Gaza would be able to pick up the pieces and start reconstructing and rebuilding after having sacrificed tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of martyrs. So that on the one hand, and then on the other, I think, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but on the other hand, it's that those of us who believe in and struggle for full Palestinian liberation, that there is no breather, there is no time to relax. This is just marking a new phase, a phase where we start reassessing, reorganizing, and moving forward in a stronger way, in order to ensure that we can realize Palestinian liberation in as soon as possible, in all of the kinds of ways that I said. And I think that, again, to repeat, over the past 15 months, we've seen solidarity with the Palestinian people emerge in multifaceted ways that we didn't see before, as a direct result of that history-changing events of the 7th of October. And this includes the legal angle, the ICJ, the ICC, etc. It includes the diplomatic levels. It includes civil society and individual activists on the ground. All of these things, I think, have reached particular heights in the past 15 months, and we should not waver. We should not stop. We should not, while we might be a bit relieved, we don't take a break. All of those things need to be intensified, and the Zionist project needs to be, the crisis of the Zionist project needs to be struck at again and again and deepened, so that it ultimately does collapse.
Well, shukran for that, Naeem. We're going to go for a quick break, and when we come back, we will then wind down.
Searching for elite local and international investment and advisory services from an award-winning firm? Look no further than the Belmont Mayer Group, your gateway to unparalleled investment and wealth management. At Belmont Mayer, we believe in the art of wealth creation, a meticulous process fueled by our unwavering commitment to excellence. With a focus on providing elite alternative investments and quality advice, we also pride ourselves on maximizing value for our esteemed investors, as seen through our consistent outperformance. Your financial success is our top priority. Join us at Belmont Mayer and experience the difference firsthand. Ready to embark on a journey of greatness? Contact us today. Reach out to the Belmont Mayer Group on 078 786 1698. Call or WhatsApp or email us at info@belmontmayer.com. Elevate your financial future with Belmont Mayer, where every detail matters.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Penny Penny Appeal's Education First campaign helps children to get access to quality education.
I'm 14 years old. When I grow up, I'd like to be a scientist.
We believe every child belongs at school,
And we want education, a better education.
learning and dreaming their way to a better future. With your help, we can provide classrooms, desks, stationery packs, and school shoes. Help make these dreams a reality. Visit www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 1100 573. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Conveniently located along the banks of the Crocodile River bordering the Kruger National Park, as a guest at Buckler's Africa Lodge, one can enjoy an amazing sunrise or sunset on our spacious deck area while you catch a glimpse of some wildlife sightings along the Crocodile River. The sounds of the African savannah will greet you whilst you enjoy your morning coffee. Buckler's Africa Lodge by Tingana Collection. Buckler's Africa Lodge is ideally situated only 6 kilometers from the Crocodile Bridge Gate in the Kruger National Park. Catering for all travelers with variety, we have 4 types of the finest rooms: superior rooms, deluxe suites, and 2-bedroomed family units. Each room is equipped with the finest amenities to make your stay unforgettable. Guests can choose between the self-catering option or book their accommodation with breakfast and dinner included. Buckler's Africa Lodge is your ideal location for the ultimate Kruger getaway experience. We specialize in exhilarating and educational game drives in Kruger, tailor-made to suit your family. Inquire about our various accommodation offerings and other activities. Visit www.tingana.co.za for more information. Buckler's Africa Lodge by Tingana Collection. Experience the pulse of Africa with us.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Well, we continue. We've got another 8 minutes or so before we end this evening's broadcast in conversation with myself, Huwaida, as we discuss the Gaza ceasefire with my guests, Huwaida Arraf, Professor Nidal, Sakr, and Jeenah. And just looking at the message, it has come through saying, while we celebrate the ceasefire and a life without bloodshed for the children of Gaza, may the people of Gaza stay in our hearts as we seek accountability for the brutal genocide unleashed on them. Never again. And this is what the tweet reads. Huwaida, just to begin with you, and as we head towards closure, just some final thoughts.
You know, something that has been talked about, and I don't know if you mentioned it here, but there are a lot of talk that in exchange, if you will, for Israel agreeing to a ceasefire, Trump may have or will promise Israel annexation of the West Bank. That's something that people are anticipating, and certainly Palestinians in the West Bank have been expecting what has been unleashed on Gaza to come their way. Although the situation in the West Bank has been horrific for the past 16 months, with much less focus, of course. But if you're just something I want to plug here, an organization that I have been with for over 2 decades, the International Solidarity Movement, is still operating in the occupied West Bank. We have not been able to get into Gaza. I don't know if we will have access to Gaza anytime in the near future. I think we all need to be pushing for Gaza to be open. But if your listeners are able to travel to the West Bank and volunteer with the International Solidarity Movement, one of the things that we're doing there is trying to provide a protective presence and solidarity with Palestinians and documenting, trying to deter active and ongoing settler and soldier attacks. And again, I think as a ceasefire hopefully takes hold and sticks in Gaza, we don't expect the brutality of Israel settlers or the military to let up very much. And the West Bank has been muted, but the aggression and the abuse has been daily. And so Palestinians need an active presence. If people can come, please look at palsolidarity.org and you can find out how to travel to part of Palestine, the occupied West Bank, and volunteer there. And as we said throughout this program, let's just be happy at this and rejoice in the slight reprieve, but recognize that we have just as much, if not more, work ahead of us to ensure accountability and on the path to liberation.
Well, we thank you for that, to Huwaida Arraf, to you, Jeenah, and also Professor Nidal Sakr. We say shukran to all of you for your time with us this evening. I believe we're going to do a live crossover to Doha right now, where the briefing has just started. So to all of you, once again, we thank you. We appreciate your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's always a pleasure with you.
Well, with that, we're going to go live across, and this is a crossover to Doha, and the briefing with regard to the ceasefire has just started, and this is the announcement that is being made right now by the Qatari Foreign Minister. And with that, I'm going to be taking leave of you, and straight to Doha we go right now. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Prime Minister Yalda Hakim from Sky News. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. You, as you say, have been working on this deal for many months. And the question is, why now? Why this moment? And was it pressure from the incoming Trump administration that got it over the line? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Yalda, for this question. Actually, we've been raising the question of the right moment for the entire period since the collapse of the first phase. But we have seen a momentum that started to build in the last month, and we kept pushing for that, working together very closely with our partners. And I can say that what we have seen from the US in the past few days, seeing a collaboration transcending both administration was a clear demonstration for the commitment of the US to reach to that deal. And I really would like to thank both the envoys who are here with us in the last couple of days, and they played a vital role in reaching to this moment. And of course, for us and Egypt, this is something that we are a stakeholder in that conflict, that we have to do it and we have to help and to support. But we have seen the steps that's been taken recently from the US has yielded to this moment.
CNN.
Congratulations. Thank you very much indeed. And to Steve Witkoff, who is Becky Anderson from CNN. Congratulations to you and to Steve Witkoff, who is also here in the room. How much confidence do you have that the deal will progress beyond phase one, sir?
Well, we have faith, Becky, that brought us to this moment. And I think that's the most important part, that we are committed. We will continue to do everything we can, everything possible, together with our partners to ensure that this deal is implemented as it's agreed. And this deal will bring us peace, hopefully, at the end of it. I believe that it all depends on the parties of the agreement and acting in good faith in that agreement in order to ensure that no collapse happening to that deal.
Can I just follow up? What mechanisms are in place to ensure that neither side breaks the ceasefire?
There is a follow-up mechanism that Egypt, Qatar, and US are going to handle. It will be placed in Cairo. And this follow-up actually will be a joint team from the three countries that will monitor the implementation of the agreement, and everything is being agreed upon and will be in place, hopefully, on the day of the execution.
Thank you.
من رويترز.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Congratulations, Andrew Mills from Reuters. Can you talk a little bit more about this follow-up mechanism? If elements of the agreement put in place tonight are violated, what will happen? Who is it that is going to report and that a violation has happened? And how will that violation be communicated to the parties, the world, the guarantors of this agreement? Thank you.
Well, this is what I have just mentioned to Becky. There will be a follow-up mechanism that all the parties will be placed in Egypt and they will follow up the implementation of the agreement. There will be a reporting mechanism for any violation, and those violations will be addressed at a very early stage. Look, we expect from the parties to adhere to the agreement. We expect the parties to stay committed to what they have committed themselves to in that agreement. But we know that these kind of agreements are very complex and will have some issues down the line. And we are ready, and we will stay committed to address those issues ahead of time.
And Prime Minister, just as a follow-up, the last truce that was in place in November 2023 did fall apart on the 8th day. What has changed in this agreement that will ensure that this has less likely to fall apart than that agreement was?
Well, the agreement on November was to build the momentum in order to lead for a longer-term agreement, which we have today. But unfortunately, the agreement in November was very transactional, so it was like a day by day. But this agreement has a clear mechanism for the first 42 days, and there's a clear mechanism to negotiate phase 2 and 3, and all the details of the agreement will be published in the next couple of days once the details are finalized.
السؤال الرابع والأخير قناة الجزيرة العربية.
Fourth question, Al Jazeera Arabic Television. I have a number of questions. The first, will this deal establish a permanent ceasefire? In other words, are the guarantees sufficient to ensure that the Israelis will honor their obligations under this deal? Another question, from this moment up to Sunday, how the situation on the ground in Gaza would be look like? The third question, what led to the success of negotiations, and what role did Qatar play, and what role will they play in the coming days? I am lost in details. Please remind me of the first question. Will this deal be conducive to a permanent ceasefire? That's enough. Hold it. With respect to the implementation of this agreement, to begin with, it all depends on the parties to conflict. All must have genuine will to commit to the agreement. The best guarantee is that the parties to conflict commit and honor their obligations under the deal. In addition to that, there are certain guarantees and assurances by the guarantors as well as the mediators in order for the negotiations and mediation efforts to continue throughout the phases up to the second phase, where the total withdrawal of the Israeli forces is announced and the war comes to an end. Other measures will follow in the coming days in order to augment this agreement. From this moment up to the next Sunday, how the situation on the ground would be in Gaza Strip. We demand that calm should be maintained from this moment until the agreement comes into force. However, the parties said that it requires a number of days for them to bring it into implementation and to be able to honor their obligations. We hope that the coming days will not see any military operations. Last question, what led to the success of the negotiations and the mediation made throughout? As mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, the entire matter rests in the hands of both the parties to conflict. We in Qatar or Egypt or the United States are mere mediators. Our role is to convey the message, and it all depends on a number of factors, or rather say a number of variables. I cannot speculate or delve in the details. However, in the past few days, there has been momentous effort by all the partners who acted as one team in order to reach this milestone. Over the past day, we held continuous meetings with constant coordination and consultation in presence of the Qatari, Egyptian, and US teams, in addition to the presence of both the delegations of Israel and Hamas. By the grace of God, we have reached this milestone, and we hope that it will come into implementation, and we hope it will be a success. It will be followed by 2 other successful phases, and the entire war comes to an end. What the people of Gaza have lived through is beyond description. More than 400 days of killing, destruction. They need total rest, respite, and permanent ceasefire. They deserve even more. Thank you. By this, we conclude the press conference. Thank you.
There you were, listening to the Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdul